And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Parliament of Geeks. I would do the gavel, but again, no soundboard. Where we ask and answer one simple question: be it weeb or be it scrub. I am your one and only gaming monk, better known as Mildra, and with me I have three of my good brothers here. We have the man who is currently the cause of and the solution to all of the mead shortages in the greater Atlanta area. Good brother Coops.
It was good meat, by the way. Viking Alchemist Meadery, get some today.
Oh, I will laugh my ass off if one of these days they end up sponsoring us. We have the flamboyant flyer, good brother Flutter, and the man of 1,000 runes, the CEO of Zadari Enterprises, and the bane of my fucking existence, good brother Xanatrix.
Zadari Enterprises would like to remind you that contracts are a legally binding document, and that any of you out there that are saying that Ike, Illyra, or Vox deserve to be punished for having to do something they're contractually obligated to do, or they lose their jobs, all of you should fucking burn. And come to Zadari Enterprises. We have a free roaster for it.
Brother, get the flamer.
I have many heavy Flammenwerfer, and they are all pointed in your general directions.
And they werf flammen.
Werft Flammen.
So, I was gonna open with the good old song of funny what money can do, but that would have been a little bit obvious. However,
I think it would have been better for an ABBA song, actually. But that's just my preference.
One, I'm not doing that. Two, I don't want to risk the wrath of the murder grandpa by singing ABBA incorrectly.
Money, money, money must be funny in a rich man's world. There you go.
Seriously.
That way, I will take all the wrath. I'd love to meet Murder Grandpa, even if he breaks me in 6 different ways.
But seriously, somebody asked his favorite song, and he had said "Dancing Queen" by ABBA.
The man has taste, but we already knew that.
Mm-hmm.
Given that he's probably the reason One Piece keeps putting out more episodes.
The One Piece is real! I will keep throwing out memes. You can't stop me.
But this is technically speaking a return, because some of you may recall a few episodes ago we talked about a particular animation block in Japan called Noitamina,
which is just the word animation backwards.
Yep. And Noitamina tends to be for more art house leaning anime. And this one, it's not as art house as say Tatami Galaxy. At least not art house in the same way.
Yeah, I don't think you can really compare the two.
But it is an adaptation, specifically an adaptation of the latest in a series of adaptations for a novel series called The Millionaire Detective, or Fugou Keiji.
Yes.
So the novels, there are only 4 stories in this novel series. This isn't like, say, Gwyn Saga, where there were decades upon decades of material to draw from.
Mm-hmm.
But it only ran from 1975 to 1977, which had 4 stories, which makes me wonder. It took 4 books in 2 years, and George R.R. Martin can't seem to put out his next book. Yes, I'm gonna keep taking shots at George Martin for the fact that that the Winds of Winter will probably be released posthumously at this rate. But 2 years after the books were finished, it was converted into a radio drama. By the way, I love radio dramas. I actually like them more than audiobooks.
Radio dramas are nice. I really like the old Doctor Who radio dramas.
I will always recommend people to look at the graphic audio library.
Mm.
In '85, it was turned into a manga, a one-volume manga. In 2005, it was a TV drama, which then got a second season, and now we have this anime, Balance Unlimited, in 2020. Now, as far as how accurate this story is to the originals, unfortunately, we can't say one way or the other, because unless I'm mistaken, the original novels have not been translated into English.
I've never found an English translated version as much as I've searched. I don't know if there's a fan translated version, and if there is, it's probably in somebody's personal collection because they translated it themselves for their own enjoyment.
That and fan translations of straight up novels are going to be harder to come by than, say, translations of manga.
Mm.
Or for the same reason that it's so hard to find fan translations of Japanese tabletop. There's more content to cover.
Mm.
Just in terms of more shit you need to translate. So if there are, and truth be told, if there were significant deviations, it wouldn't really affect the score, because that sort of closeness to the source material is not something I lean into as heavily as some others.
Mm.
I mean, you're not going to see me going through the Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings movies with a fine-tooth comb pointing out every single deviation from the source material. Especially since, and I know some of the purists have a hard time understanding this, a film or a TV series is not the same as a book.
There's a reason the word adaptation is used.
Yep. Adapting from one medium to another is a skill that not a lot of people understand the deep it's a skill with a very deep and very wide ocean to it. Or if you want to use the floor and ceiling analogy, it's a skill with a high floor and an extremely high ceiling. Mm-hmm. Adaptation takes someone who understands the source material well enough to not only know the type of story and themes being told and used, but also how they can change it and still keep those themes and that type of story idea intact.
Yeah. And if you want an example of what happens when you try and stick too close, I will always bring up The Road, because it's a perfect example of this kind of thing. Now, that being said, this was actually a weird one to go with, because it's technically shorter than the usual affair. Usually we stick with shows that run about 12 to 13 episodes.
Yep.
Fugou Keiji is 11 episodes, which did make for some weird moments because of the 3 episodes a week rule that we tend to do when watching a given show for these reviews. All that it meant was that for the final one we just did 2 episodes.
Mm-hmm. I also know that we've discussed specifically another show that Shades and I both have recommended. Mm-hmm. That we'd actually have to go a little longer because the OVAs need to be included as part of the runtime. Otherwise, you just miss out on the entire finale.
Yeah,
I know what you're referring to.
Now, this was animated by Cloverworks, who have a very good very, very good track record.
In some cases. Mm-hmm. Let's not bring up Frank's, or maybe I will.
Well, can we really bring it up when they scrubbed that off of their list?
No, that was Trigger that scrubbed it off their list.
Fair.
Aniplex and Cloverworks, Or I should say A1 Pictures, excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, A1 Pictures and Cloverworks, which is technically Cloverworks is technically a subsidiary, or was technically a subsidiary of A1 Pictures. It was one of their studios, but now I think it is all of A1 Pictures at this point.
More or less.
Oh no,
So
no, it's separated from A1 Pictures, but they're both still under Aniplex.
Yeah. So the director for this is Tomohiko Ito, who's not, he doesn't have a lot of material under his belt.
He was director for Sword Art Online and Sword Art Online 2, but he was also director for Erased.
So
This shit, bro.
his debut as a director, and it seems that most of the stuff I find on him is director. I don't see a whole lot of like episode director Actually, you know what? I take that back. He has storyboard and episode director credits all over the place. A significant more than on his Wikipedia page. But
Yep.
But as far as the director stuff, his first one was Occult Academy, which is another one which if the list wasn't as full as it is, that one might be on the list for the future. Obviously, Sword Art Online and Sword Art Online 2. Silver Spoon, which I haven't seen, that was in 2013 and was an Arakawa work. And I can tell it's an Arakawa work because there's a cow on the cover. In other words, Arakawa is on the cover.
Boo!
Look, she's the one who keeps portraying herself as a cow in her manga. And no one knows why. And anyway, Ito had also done Erased, as mentioned before, in 2016. Had done a couple other film projects when it came to Sword Art Online, which I haven't seen because going through the anime itself was enough. And a project in 2019 called Hello World.
Did you see what I see though, Monk?
What?
He was also setting production and production advancement for a few episodes of X.
We can't escape it. He was also,
If I feel the pain, I will make you feel it too.
He was also a storyboard director for a couple episodes of Trigun Stampede, which is everybody keeps acting like that's the drizzling shits because it's not as good. It's not as good as the original anime. And
anyone saying that it's not as good as the original anime is making a comparison between apples and durian fruit. They're two entirely different, so alienly different that making the comparison is a case of not even wrong. Fuck y'all who hate Trigun Stampede anime. It is amazing. The 3D CG in the entire show is magnificent, and y'all are just haters because you didn't get your favorite little Trigun from the 90s. Eat shit and fucking puke out all your nostalgia venom and actually watch the thing for what it is.
Yeah. I've talked about Trigun Stampede. Not to get too far on a tangent, but I've talked about Trigun Stampede with brother JT, and I do think some people took the whole inspired by Marvel and Disney the wrong way. I can see the Disney inspiration because of the way Vash moves in that anime. It feels very much like a Golden Age Disney character.
Yes, but it's also. Do you want to know what animation I would compare it with if we're talking Disney here, Monk? And technically, I don't think this is Disney, but I think it is. But it isn't. But it is.
What, Renaissance?
Treasure Planet.
I can see that. Especially since both of them are flirting with science fiction. Ito was also an assistant director for Summer Wars. He was a storyboarder for one episode of Madoka Magica. Was was a storyboard, episode director, assistant episode director, and setting production for Monster. I would have loved to cover Monster in this series, but it's too many episodes.
There are a lot of things I'd love to cover in this, but they're all too many episodes.
Mm-hmm. He was a storyboard for a couple episodes of Guilty Crown. Was part of the setting production for Gunslinger Girl. Was involved as an episode director and unit director and assistant director in various episodes for Claymore. Had a couple storyboard credits for Blood Blockade Battlefront, which is an interesting beast that I may go into more detail down the road. And there definitely was a. I know I mistakenly said that he had mainly done directing. He has done all manner of storyboard and the like, because if there's anything that we've taken, it's that a lot of directors and the like for anime productions tend to wear many hats.
Yep.
Or have a kind of climb through the ranking thing, starting as like a storyboarder, then maybe being an assistant director to an episode, then directing episodes, until finally becoming full director of a series. That's the pattern that I've noticed. Now, as far as the voice cast, once again, I will note that we ended up watching the sub of the series, not the dub. And there are a few familiar names. one of them, a name that anybody watching enough anime will end up encountering at one point, Maya Sakamoto.
Yep. Also, anyone who's watched any Gridman, Reina Ueda is actually a side character here.
Mm-hmm.
We've actually got quite a few bigger names. Mamoru Miyano as one of the deuteragonists, Kato. We've got Junya Enoki as a supporting cast member. We've also got Rikia Koyama as another supporting cast member. There are a lot of big names here used as small parts, but very effective parts.
Mm-hmm. And some of you may have noticed a pattern that with these kind of shows that we cover, we tend to prefer smaller casts. Because smaller casts means more time can be given to individual characters, even minor characters.
Which the entirety of the Modern Crimes unit is its own character, or set of characters, I should say. Mm-hmm. They're really fun. One thing I would like to point out is that the lead music composer, I guess you would say, is Yugo Kanno, who, if you don't know that name, you probably have not been watching enough anime, because he was one of the music directors for like 4 seasons of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure.
He's got a lot of composer credits.
Psychopaths, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure from Stardust Crusaders through Stone Ocean.
His first composer credit is Da Capo, all the way back in 2003. Yes.
He's also got things for the music for Cells at Work Code Black, the Blam movie, Ajin, almost entirely. He did the music for the Batman Ninja movie, which I think even people who don't watch anime would know about just from sheer osmosis.
He also was responsible for composition for both of the Neo games.
Yep. And he did music for the Sandland movie, and he's been everywhere, and it really shows how good he is at this. Mm-hmm. Stupid good.
I mean, I wasn't a fan of the Blame anime, but that's just because I don't think Blame works as an anime.
Yeah.
But I should I believe the way you had described Millionaire Detective is what if Bruce Wayne decided to become a detective with all his money?
It was a detective with all his money, combined with all the gadgets that are better than James Bond.
Mm-hmm. Which is funny because the opening, which is a full-on banger that is gonna stick in your head for a while, Navigator. The visuals for the opening are very clearly trying to channel James Bond.
Yeah, there's a part that looks directly like the whole staring down a barrel part of any James Bond opening.
Mm-hmm. But the first episode we ended up getting was I Came, I Saw, I Sponsored. Which is where we're introduced to a couple things. One of them is our deuteragonist, Daisuke Kanbei.
One of our two deuteragonists, yeah. Daisuke Kanbei and Haru Kato.
Who is a detective, but a detective for the Modern Crime Squad, which is kind of seen as the misfits, the B squad, those who aren't good enough to be the proper detectives who get all the action.
They're not even the B squad. Remember that there's mentioned both the first division and the second division. Mm-hmm. Modern Crimes is essentially the place people go when they aren't accepted anywhere else. It's where all the nails that stuck out are hammered down.
The island of misfit toys.
That fits too.
Especially since later on in the episode when we get to see the office that they inhabit, it's not exactly the most professional looking.
It's essentially a giant storage room turned into a bull pit.
Mm-hmm. I mean, if any, and this is also where we get the other half of the equation, Haru Kato. Wow. You might want to fix that, Flutter.
Oh. Hold on.
But and this is also, and when it comes to him, Kato is probably the most serious person in Major Crimes, even though
he's the he's the only serious person in Major Crimes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
everybody else is either some form of slacker or is way too easygoing.
Well, we've got the lady that Reina Ueda voices, Saiki, who all she does is sit around giving people what are essentially tea snacks.
Mm-hmm.
You know, rice crackers, different candies, things of that nature. Then we've got the eternal gambler, Yumoto, who is, eternal gambler fits. We've got the guy that tends to be Kato's partner, scapegoat, guy he drags along everywhere because he's the only one fit enough to do so. Kame, who has a thing for browsing adult websites while he's at work. Like an idiot.
And not have a screen tint.
No, he even gets his headphones removed while he's listening. At one point in the first episode. In the first fucking episode. Then we have the old guy who's apparently 2 days eternally away from retirement, They all call him Cho-san, which I think is a play on Cho-han, since he always has a pair of dice with him.
Mm-hmm.
But Nakamoto Chosuke.
Yeah.
And he's a fairly easygoing guy who is really good at evoking emotion in people, which is how he gets his interrogations done.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, their chief, Kiyomizu, a somewhat jolly, chubby guy who likes making model ships.
And yet somehow is more. He should take up a real hobby, like say
Gunpla.
Gunpla or strategically eating rice.
Really, it's only Kato's the only one in this unit that wants to actually do something. The rest are they really don't care so long as they get a paycheck and do their jobs.
Mm-hmm. But things end up escalating because the First Division is essentially voluntelling them to act as additional security bodies for the car festival in Ginza, because the security department's short on manpower.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And of course, at the same time, Daisuke arrives in Japan in the least subtle plane you could possibly go with. No, in a damn private jet with all the luxuries accounted for.
It's black and it's gold, and part of the gold says Kambe.
Mm-hmm. But on the a bit during a traffic stop, that's when the two end up meeting.
You call it a traffic stop. We call it him interrupting a fucking carnival of cars.
Mm-hmm. And when we say a carnival, we're talking a lot of cars from what is referred to as the Prince of Aruba Emirates.
Yes, because they have to keep the legally distinct United Arab Emirates.
Mm-hmm.
But the entire reason that they crash through this carnival of cars, I'm going to continue to call it that because I like the alliteration. Some might call it a motor cavalcade. I tell them you're boring. Is that First Division has been running around. Kato noticed it. He confronted his friend from when he was in the First Division, Hoshino, and overhears that there's a assassination and bomb threat against the Prince of Aruba. And that the terrorists have already been found and arrested and confessed, but that they also left the bomb on the in the middle of the city. And Kato says, "What sort of, vehicle?" And they overhear, "Hey, it's a white van with the name of these cleaners on it." And he looks across the street, and there it is. And two, let's call them lowlifes, who have been casing joints to try and steal from jewel places in Ginza and ended up robbing a confectioner. See the cops, are confronted by the cops, and shoot at Kame, who everybody else was like, "Oh my god, he's dead," for a second, and then it's paint bullets. And they get in the van and they drive off, not realizing there's a bomb inside. That's why Kato keeps trying to get a car, and then sees a car bashing through the carnival of cars until he is about to hit a child on the road. So Kato stands in front of the child, and Daisuke crashes his car. Kato's like, "What are you doing? You're stupid. Only cops should be here." And he pulls out his badge. He's like, "Yeah, I'm a cop as of today." And then he goes and pays 1 billion yen to buy what is essentially a legally distinct Shelby Viper from the Prince of Aruba so that they can chase the criminals.
The prince is like, I'm not selling that, and then offers then until
Tell him I'll only buy it for 300 million yen is what he tells his interpreter. And then Daisuke comes back in Arabic and goes, "This is 1 billion. It's more than enough. Get out."
Of course, there's also the fact that Daisuke does not seem to understand traffic laws, or rather doesn't care, because he just drives right in the middle of this carnival of cars.
Mm-hmm.
And no doubt paying off each one that he hits.
Which is all of them.
Mm-hmm. All of them because they're in 2 lines and he goes right through the middle. You know, like this is the world's most expensive demo derby.
Yeah. But eventually Kato also jumps in the car with Kanbei and goes, "I'm not going to let you out of my sight. You're a fucking menace." And then Daisuke starts talking to himself, or at least Kato thinks he's talking to himself. But he's actually talking to his supercomputer / AI butler, Husk. Which, he tells Husk, first of all, to change all of the traffic lights to keep traffic from flowing in a certain direction, except for 1 lane to let the van through, while also simultaneously tracking the van, and at the same time also getting Husk ready to raise a drawbridge at one point. And then he's like, "By the way," he's giving all these commands. Then Kato's like, "Yo, what about all the damages?" And then he goes, "Pay back everything double the market price." And it's there that we first hear the catchphrase that we all came to love. "Of course, balance unlimited." And, well, eventually everybody gets funneled to that bridge, or at least Kato and Daisuke get funneled to that bridge behind the van. The van starts crossing the bridge, and the bridge starts going up so that they can't. They start sliding down, and then, well, Daisuke rams it from behind to push it up the bridge and try to get it into the water. One of the 2 thugs, he's like, "I gotta leave you behind. I love you. I'm sorry," and rolls out from the passenger side because the driver's side is up against the guardrail. And she's like, "Shit, what do I do?" And Kato's like, "There's somebody still in there." And so he climbs up the front of the Shelby onto the van, gets in the van, helps the girl out. Mm-hmm. And just as Daisuke pushes the van over the bridge, Kato manages to bail and grab onto the ledge of the bridge. Van goes in the water. Van goes boom. Daisuke comes up to the edge of the bridge, sees Kato hanging there by the tips of his fingers, looks down at him, and smirks. And Kato screams at him as he falls into the water.
And after each episode, there is a summary of expenses.
Yep.
Totaling the amount of yen. And each episode, we decided to convert it first from 2020 money into modern money, and then from modern money into freedom dollars.
Well, no, we did it backwards. We took from modern day back to 2020 when the thing aired, and then converted. Mm-hmm. So for the first episode, everything cost 1,369,800,000 yen. When converted into US dollars at the average of $1 to 0.93 yen, essentially. Which means taking this whole thing and multiplying by 0.0093. $12,739,140. Now, the costs are itemized in each ending, but they're itemized in Japanese, and I didn't feel like translating the text myself.
Mm-hmm.
There were a few things I could tell just from the words in them, what was which. And obviously, 1 billion of these things was him buying the car. So, you knew that much.
Mm-hmm.
But this will become a trend.
Yep.
Then
Then we
Fair.
had episode 2. Love does much, money does everything. And I'd say that if the major thing to take out of this particular episode is that not only is Daisuke a detective, badge and all, but his assigned partner is Haru. Much to Haru's vast annoyance, because he is the complete opposite of him. To the point where when it comes to the case that they end up having to deal with a couple of street comedians that may be involved with drugs, Kato tries to take the usual police procedural type of approach. Casing places and all of that kind of thing. Whereas Daisuke just throws money at the problem.
because who says money can't buy happiness or solve any of your problems?
This is a point of contention for Kato the entire time. Like, he doesn't like that all Daisuke does is throw his money around to solve issues.
Mm-hmm.
He says it isn't just.
And his idea of justice is definitely a core principle to him. I wouldn't say he's as obsessed with his idea of justice as, say, Suzaku is, but
I don't know. We can't put him under a Gios to test.
Mm-hmm. But this does result in the start of a bit of a mini arc when it comes to pursuing a drug ring, including one woman who they end up following, who in reality is Suzue, Daisuke's assistant,
Relative.
but also fills certain assistant roles, and sometimes does it a bit too well.
Well, she calls him, a lot of the time she calls him Botchan, which is how rich household members refer to the heir of that household.
Mm-hmm.
She essentially, rather than just being his relative, whatever type of relative she may be, whether that's a cousin or an aunt or whatever, she sees herself more as a servant to him in many ways.
Mm-hmm.
Which is a thing that happened in Japanese households.
Yeah.
Way back when.
But this later on leads to, as I said, leads to a bit of a stakeout. And once again, while Haru tries the undercover route, even sneaking into the club, in order to try and slip with the guy's phone, Daisuke takes a more direct approach, which is get a helicopter out there, buy the fucking building where the club is at, and shoot knockout gas from what looks like a rocket launcher.
I would like to note that no matter whether he had purchased that building or not, there are definitely ordinances in Japan that would prevent him from shooting, well, a rocket launcher.
Mhm.
But that's okay. After they catch the Yakuza gang that was selling the mescaline and then also murdered one of Kato's favorite gravure models using mescaline, we get the costs for this particular episode. 83,006,110,000 yen. And converted into US dollars, that's $771,956,823.
Oh, I forgot to mention one little thing. After the events of this whole thing, as well, and there is the whole detail that for whatever reason Haru is averse to firing a gun after he explains that because of a situation in a bank, there was a he describes it as a misfire, but he hasn't been able to fire a gun since. And in the aftermath, the chief ends up requesting that Haru head to Hong Kong for a meeting. Who he's fine with, but then Daisuke decides to help out by going, "Hey, why don't you take the trip on my jet?"
It was more implied that the trip to Hong Kong was Daisuke's to begin with.
Mm-hmm. And the total cost, if I have this right, is $763,656,212.
The cheapest episode of the entire anime.
Well, the bulk, most of it was relatively cheap. The bulk of it was buying the tower,
Which was
Well,
like 80.
I just mean in comparison to the rest of the anime.
No, that is not this episode.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's a later episode.
But-
And this episode is more expensive than episode 1 regardless, so...
Right. My mistake.
But episode 3 is titled "The Sinews of War Are Infinite Money."
I would like to mention the Japanese episode titles are very close to these English titles, but the Japanese title for episode 3 is Kinwa Senryokunari, which is literally silver becomes war power. Which the Sinews of War or Infinite Money is a good poetic way to say that.
Mm-hmm. Now, I think the first thing to note with this, and obviously we don't see what happens on the trip to Hong Kong because we don't need to. But
if I remember correctly, what the chief said that the trip to Hong Kong was about was just some kind of like an expo for cops, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And they were supposed to do a presentation of some sort.
The police equivalent of a trade show.
Yeah.
But the story picks up back at the residence of Daisuke's grandmother,
which is also where Daisuke lives.
Mm-hmm. Which after a bit of greeting, his grandmother Kikuko thanks Haru for taking care of her grandson, because Haru is technically his senior, if only by a year.
Well, also is senior at the police station by a lot longer.
But because of that, Haru is asked to be a good senior to Daisuke, much to his annoyance. But he can't say anything because
It's his grandmother.
Mm-hmm.
This is also where Jiro Hattori is introduced, who is the family butler, as opposed to the AI butler, who is Husk, as mentioned before. But this was also where we had the bullet train incident, with Haru chatting with a guy named Yuichiro, who was talking about how he has to head to the States, or rather heading to Tokyo to attend prep school after failing an entrance exam. And since he's also mentioning that he wasn't listening to music on his headphones, was actually listening to English conversations, since he has to travel to the States with his sister. But shortly after that, things get a bit dicey because somebody decided to do a hostage situation, and it is actually that same kid. The crux of this is Haru and Daisuke trying to resolve the issue before First Division comes in, because they're going to bring in SWAT, or the equivalent of it. I'm not sure what the proper name of the SWAT equivalent would be in Japan.
The JSDF. They would just send in the Japanese self-defense force at that point.
Mm-hmm. Point is they're sending folks much more heavily armed for this kind of thing, and there's an implication that whoever can do something on a YouTube XP that gets the most amount of views will get a large cash prize.
Yeah, you overhear from a conversation about how ChainTube says the first person to get to 10 million viewers in this amount of time is going to get a prize.
Which sounds like the kind of thing that people think Mr. Beast would do. Not that he would, but you know how people have had these straw man ideas of him, and I'm not even a fan of his stuff. But I'm certainly not a fan of the hate boner that some people have for his stuff. But of course the thing that ends up solving it, aside from a bit of gadgetry, is the fact that there's a bunch of fangirls for a boy band called Yokoites.
And they're all middle-aged women.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like Kame's Paradise.
Yeah. Specifically, Yoko Rainbow Starlights, who apparently were doing what sounded like a farewell tour.
Yeah, it was their last tour.
Mm-hmm. Although, in my personal opinion, I treat last tours for musicians the way I do retirement for wrestlers, or retirement matches for wrestlers, with a big ass grain of salt.
I was going to say, you mean wrestlers that specifically have the name Undertaker?
I was actually referencing Terry Funk.
Yeah,
that works too. That works too.
God rest his soul, but you could make a drinking game out of the number of times he retired. But after the whole thing is worked out, first off, it's revealed that the gun that Yuichiro was using is fake.
Air gun.
And two, one of the remarks that Haru had made was kind of was, I won't say thrown back at him, but certainly used as a callback, because he had said that Yuichiro doesn't seem like the person who would kill, which is the reason why things resolved the way that they did, because as Daisuke said, he's not the type who would kill. And the total cost for this episode, 11,697,800. One of the prices was a set of fuming missiles that was used to make a smoke screen for the operation.
Mm-hmm.
As well and about and about 800 million yen for removing the media connected to the case, including the live stream.
Yeah, telling media to go blackout entirely either takes a lot of money or very illegal actions.
Mm-hmm.
Daisuke did both.
Yep. Episode 4 is entitled "Nothing Makes a Man So Adventurous as an Empty Pocket."
And I would say that the transliteration here of the Japanese text is pretty close to that.
Mm-hmm. This one was technically speaking a filler, but it's a funny bit of filler.
It wasn't a filler though.
Yeah,
This was more of a character establishment episode.
Yeah.
Because we learned a lot about Daisuke, but we only had surface knowledge about Kato.
Yeah. We have the whole thing about Daisuke not wanting to eat natto, which, come on, it's not that bad. Unless somebody's really, really bad at making natto. Which
fermented soybeans taste gross.
And he just storms off, but in the process he's got no money.
Well, he forgets his earring for Husk, and his phone drops out of his pocket in the truck that he's driven over in.
Mm-hmm. So he has balance limited.
I would say he has balance 0.
Mm-hmm.
That motherfucker broke.
Which it was at the worst time, because Haru was hoping that he could use Hughes to help find a kid's lost dog named Shiro.
And before all of you think it, yes, it's named Shiro because the dog has white fur.
Mm-hmm. A little bit on the nose, but if you watch enough anime, on the nose names is something you should be more than used to.
A little bit on the nose, but it was also named by a child.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever heard what children call their dogs? Spot? When it has spots? That's a real thing, people.
To be expected as for that reason.
Mm-hmm. But this most definitely is a character exploration when it comes to Haru, because Daisuke basically gets to see what Haru's daily life is like. Although all the while Suzue is going more and more crazy with worry, even to the point of having apology messages on various signs.
On various electronic signs, yeah.
Mm-hmm. But through this we have him just through the daily life, especially getting groceries for dinner and seeing how he relaxes, as well as watching a cop drama that Haru is really into.
Well, he's also drunk.
Yeah, he's
They're both very drunk.
yeah.
Soju.
And for those who've never had it, sochu is sake but stronger. It's not
It's
far
also
removed from vodka.
it's also made from potatoes like vodka is.
Hmm.
Well, in most cases, potato shochu is a thing.
Yeah. But while Haru had slept in his normal bed, Daisuke slept in the bathtub.
We don't know why either, because Haru had rolled him out of futon and stuff.
Yeah.
But it's also here that Haru showed that he can make really good food with budget ingredients, including making natto that Daisuke actually likes.
Which said natto is later referred to as Devil's Natto Rice. Because at the end of the episode, Daisuke ends up making it himself.
And has his family eat it.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least Suzue.
Yeah.
But the next day, Kanbei disappears, and Haru figures he probably went back to his house. And continues to look for the dog with the kid. And near the end of the day, Daisuke shows up with the dog and gives it to the kid, and the kid's like, yay! But off to the side, Daisuke tells Haru, I actually just bought the second dog from the same breeder that dog came from. I was like, but why? He's like, because it turns out the first dog got hit by a car after he got away from the kid.
Yep.
Better not to tell him anything.
Mm-hmm.
Also, you have to pay the breeder. Gives him a bill for 55,000 yen.
Mm-hmm.
Which, while not as expensive as anything we've seen thus far, is still very expensive for the hard-pressed civil servant Haru Kato. And it is this episode where we get the lowest total out of all episodes.
Right. It's this episode.
55,616 yen, or about $520 US.
Mm-hmm.
And most of that came from the cost of the dog.
Yep.
Still a pretty cheap purebred dog, though. Most purebreds are about 2,000 in the US.
Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, things getting hit by a car or a truck is a lot more common in parts of Japan than most people would think, which is the reason why the whole truck-kun is so much of a thing. I'm not gonna say it's an everyday occurrence, but it happens more often than not.
Mm. It
But-
tends to happen more in the bigger cities too.
Mm-hmm. I'd imagine if I had to guess as to part of the reason, it's because of how packed some of the roads are.
Yeah, with how packed they are, you have less visibility.
Because especially since we see something often of somebody walking out of the house and then truck-kun. But episode 5 is titled, If Money Be Not Thy Servant, It Will Be Thy Master. Which is essentially the panic room story. The president from the Republic of Poliador arrives in Japan, and the modern crimes is assigned to protect the embassy. But outside of the embassy, because all of the real important folk are from First Division, and they're inside the place. A good chunk of it is focused on I believe it was a land deal. One that
A construction deal.
Yeah, construction deal on land that really pissed off some of the people in Poliador, including one would-be assassin who ended up taking himself out in order to not get captured. But the thing is that was when the assassination attempt was done, that was just a ruse. Because in doing so, the president and his entourage, including Daisuke, were put into the panic room. The panic room had a gas bomb in it, which was the real trap.
Filled with VX gas.
Mm-hmm. Which I believe you said is basically nerve gas.
No, it absolutely is nerve gas.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, VX stands for Venomous Agent X.
And the thing, it does end up being a kind of race against time to try and get in the building. And the only reason they were able to get into the panic room is because of the janitor who would sneak into that panic room to do things he shouldn't.
It showed a picture of a Tenga and lube and magazines.
Mm-hmm. But the total cost for this one was 2,916,400. There was also this implication a little ways into it that Daisuke has no intention of being the heir to the Kanbei family. Which is a bit of a teaser for later. Episode 6 was Ill Got, Ill Spent. And I'd say this is where things start getting into the story that's going to focus on, that's going to take the largest amount of focus. Because Daisuke decides to check out the device that was left behind by the suspect in that assassination attempt, but Hughes simply says, "I can't answer that." The investigation leads them to a woman named Imura, who's with a manufacturing company. However, she's seen as a potential suspect, but manages to get out. Though Daisuke had a solution to the issue, because her car is a very fancy car with a lot of electronics that can be very hackable. And so you know, just make her speed and make her think that she make her think that she crashed her car into somebody. If you're not picking up what I'm putting down when it comes to Daisuke, he does not believe in subtle approaches to problems.
Mm-hmm.
Like, at all.
Well, we already knew that from episode 1, though.
Mm-hmm. Which it'd be really funny if he was ever assigned to a raid.
Oh, Jesus.
But with episode 7, money is the root of all evil. That particular investigation continues on, and this is where we get a bit. I believe this episode is where we got a bit more on Cho-san, specifically the cold case that he's had in the back of his head for 19 years.
Mm-hmm. This is where we get half of the episode is basically a flashback to that entire murder case of the murder of Daisuke's mother
Mm-hmm.
by his father.
Yeah, his father was a top suspect, but then the task force that was assigned to the case, because a high profile death, was folded due to pressure from the brass. And
That wasn't the only thing. The father was the material witness they kept looking for, and then he was found dead.
Mm-hmm.
So the case was considered done and over with, as both the victim and the material witness. Well, there are no other witnesses, so there's nothing they can do.
Yeah. There's also the fact that while they did pull that little stunt to try and get that woman from that manufacturing company, ultimately it didn't go anywhere despite a bit of stalling. But then when she decided to leave, her car went boom with her in it.
Yeah, that was the end of episode 6, though.
And it's just it. But the more expensive thing that happened with this one was that the higher up involved in the whole thing. In fact, he's the head of the investigation part of Division 1.
Yeah, the division head Takei, who was originally chose junior partner during the original investigation of the death of Sayuri Kanbei. Mm-hmm. He was the son-in-law to then division head. I believe his name is Saiga. Mm-hmm. But they gas him in his car, and then use a very, 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 very advanced VR system to try and trick him into giving them information.
Because whenever it came to saying the name of who was involved, for whatever reason, he was terrified of saying it.
Yep.
But eventually they're able to get something out of it, and he's still terrified that if he gives anything, he's gonna be dead.
Mm-hmm.
And in a roundabout way, it reminds me of the ridiculous lengths that Diavolo would go to make sure that nobody knew where he was. To the point of creating a split personality just to keep himself as hidden as possible. While we're not going that far here, it's in the same ballpark.
Mm.
And episode 8 was titled "Money Burns a Hole in the Pocket," which is the final spot of us getting Chosan's most dangerous asset when it comes to getting information. If anything, would it be fair to say that he is less like a police interrogator and more like a military interrogator?
I don't know.
No, that's a bit far. He's a more dangerous type of interrogator because of the fact that he doesn't need to use any sort of threat of force or any aggressive posturing.
Yep. Now, something I think we forgot to mention is the entire reason that they're trying to investigate this stuff. Mm-hmm. The VX gas bomb and the jamming unit that was used to keep communications jammed in an area around the embassy are both made by a company named Mizuo Future Technologies. However, a lot of the components within both of them come from Kanbei creations as well, which is part of the reason that he's investigating. Specifically, these what would they call them? Sea grape looking type things that are later confirmed to be adolium, a fictional alloy that does something. We don't know what.
Mm-hmm. But
And I looked at the chemical composition of adolium. 3 of the 4 elements are real things. The last one isn't.
mm-hmm.
That's why it's a fictional compound.
It made me so mad. I was hoping that there would be a real one so I could see if there was a real life analog.
It is higher grade English compared to some of the stuff we would get years ago.
I mean, it wasn't even English. It was just, hey, it was some lithium, some silicon, some oxygen, and then M. Not N, M. There is no singular M on the periodic table. They're all M with another letter. I checked.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, essentially what Cho is trying to find out is about adolium and what Takei knows about the whole murder case and the Kanbei family.
There was also the fact that there were some details that were hidden in a locker, but the key to that locker mysteriously vanished.
Takei gave it up to Saiki.
Mm-hmm. But in this particular episode, we did. This was something of a bit of a flashback in the sense of detailing the case.
Well, that was episode 7.
Yeah.
Episode 8, they're trying to investigate,
and Husk is not being cooperative
and deleting results as they're searching for them because Husk is an asshole apparently.
Mm-hmm. I can't let you do that, Dave.
Open the pod bay doors, Husk.
And a lot of it deals with Daisuke's parents in this instance, and
Yep, they're
Go ahead.
They're trying to find out where his parents worked before his mother was murdered, and in order to try and find out what they were working on and how it was related to adolium.
Mm-hmm.
And so Kato, Suzue, Daisuke, Cho are all trying different avenues to find information. And eventually Kato thinks maybe we can determine what this lab badge says from one of the family pictures, but the reflected light is too much. However, Daisuke, while looking at the pictures, like, wait, I recognize this building. It's an old country house we used to have, which is now a lab.
Mm-hmm.
And so Daisuke and Kato go after this lab while Suzue and Cho remain behind.
Mm-hmm. But this is where we get to episode 9. A golden key can open any door.
Not yet.
Oh.
Because they go towards the lab. They have the fun diversion with the missile backpack that has spheres that shoot bullets in every direction. As a distraction while Daisuke gets into the lab and finds evidence of his father. But while they're getting in, someone is interfering with Husk in the actual manor. The control of Husk is taken away from Suzue, and he's getting through all of the giant bulkhead firewalls to get to where Cho and Takei are. And Suzue first confronts him as he comes down in the elevator, but she can't believe who it is when he takes off his mask. Oh my god, it's Shigemaru Kanbei, Daisuke's father. And then he takes her out. Then he gets to Cho and to Takei, who fight him, but he kills them both. Then we get to episode 9.
Yeah. It is revealed when we get to episode 9 that Cho left one parting gift. There was a tracker in those dice. a tracker and a receiver when it came to that pair of dice he always had.
He left the tracking die on Shigemaru, and he had the receiving die on himself.
Mm-hmm. And Daisuke, as this thing is progressing, insists that this is a internal problem with the Kanbei family, which causes a rift between him and Kato to the point where Daisuke this decides to just give up his badge. I believe it was also around this time that it's revealed that the one member of Division 1 who was once his partner, but the two have had a adversational attitude about. He tries to imply that Daisuke had some sort of grudge about being demoted when that was not the case at all.
Yeah, that was after First Division came into Modern Crimes and arrested Kato as the material witness for the death of Takei.
Mm-hmm.
And he tried to imply, yeah, you had a grudge, right? He's like, nah, I wouldn't still be a cop if it weren't for him.
Mm-hmm.
I would have stopped being a cop if it weren't for him.
And while in the process of continuing that investigation, they see that Kanbei is heading. I believe it was around this time that it's revealed that he was heading to an offshore boat.
Not yet. What happened? What next? You did. What happened is everybody is trying to track Shigemaru from a different way. Suzue and Daisuke are doing it using Husk, which works for a little bit until Husk starts deleting shit again. Daisuke gets to the car his father used and expects it's a trap, that they'll gas him like they tried to... Well, like they gassed Takei, essentially. But they also see on some footage before it's destroyed by Husk that Shigemaru Kanbei had met with the bodyguard of a famous or an infamous arms dealer named Franz Weinsky. That's the name of the bodyguard. And the arms dealer is Thomas Matheson. Whereas the rest of the Modern Crimes unit uses what is essentially a really old radio listening outpost hidden in a kebab van to try and track the Dai. Pardon me.
Mm-hmm.
To try and track the Dai to its pair. And because of that, they're going around in this kebab van. Whereas Kato, while still with Hoshino, gets the call from Modern Crimes saying, "Hey, it looks like the transmitter's at Ora Wharf." And Hoshino is at the same time given a letter found in Takei's desk that was a letter of resignation from Kato.
Mm-hmm.
It is at this point that Hoshino believes that Kato is telling the truth about not having a grudge against Takei.
Mm-hmm.
So he starts driving him to Ora Wharf.
Yep.
When Suzue tells Daisuke, Husk is deleting all of the CCTV footage, he's like, just make your own. And this is where we get the infamous smartphone ad for, hey, just raise your smartphone in the air and spin around in a circle. The first 100,000 people to do this will get 100,000 yen. 100,000 yen is close to $1,000 US. So this is like you getting an ad on your phone going, "Hey, put your hand up in the air and spin your phone, and you'll get $1,000." Bravo. That's all I can say. Bravo.
And I had made reference to the to the sonar cell phone thing in The Dark Knight.
And I was like, yeah, this one just isn't nearly as invasive because it's voluntary.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, sending out the ad is still technically a bit of hacking, but he's not hacking the phones directly.
No.
Until he turns on their cameras.
Mm-hmm.
But due to this, all three different groups, the rest of Modern Crimes, Kato and Hoshino, and Daisuke, all arrive at different times. Kato goes up on the container ship that the Dai's signal comes from, while the rest of Modern Crimes hangs back.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually, Daisuke shows up as the boat starts pulling away. Gets out of the car, gets equipped with something called an active support veil, or ASV. And then drives his car into the water, because obviously it's also a submarine. Once again, like I said, James Bond, but better.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And once Daisuke gets onto the ship, we first see that Kato is kind of sneaking around trying to find Shigemaru. And Daisuke is, well, he's solid snaking this shit here. Going around, beating guys up, knocking them out, saying, "Get me to Vinsky." But at the same time, once Daisuke is fighting Vinsky, who has this arm-mounted laser cannon, or charged particle acceleration cannon, actually, Shigemaru's like, I'm going to activate this Adolium jammer, which is more powerful than the previous jammer, which fries electronics. It fries Kato's phone.
Yep.
It also deactivates the active support veil that Daisuke has, and cuts off the transmission earring, which also drops from Daisuke's ear in the fight with Vinsky, and, well, Vinsky steps on it to destroy it. And as Vinsky is beating down on Daisuke and about to basically beat him to unconsciousness or kill him, Kato is behind him, drawing his gun and pulling a bead on Vinsky, but he can't do it.
Mm-hmm. And then we end up getting to episode 10, where Daisuke does end up getting saved eventually by Kato, just not with him taking a shot. And a plan is formed. Daisuke trying to get to the bottom of the ship to stop stop and eventually destroy the generator that was powering the ship, while Kato provides a distraction.
And even fakes his death by dropping off the ship.
Mm-hmm.
This plan is drawn because Suzue, in her infinite wisdom, sends a bunch of drones after the ship. And they get seen, and they get shot down, only for many drones to come out and get on the ship. And get Daisuke a new communication earring and some more equipment.
Pretty much. And of course, one of the rules of fiction ends up applying. If you destroy a crucial part of the enemy's ship or base, it must explode.
This is known as a load-bearing boss or a load-bearing structure.
Mm-hmm.
It's also discussed on the side that adolium can create electricity from seawater, which is why it's also the engines of the ship.
And what allowed the ship to essentially move in, for all intents and purposes, a stealth mode.
Yep, near silence. It would have been silent running even to most submarines, I'm pretty sure.
Mm-hmm. But in the aftermath of this, after the confrontation, Daisuke ends up making a observation regarding Shigemaru. He's not.
That's
using
not.
That's not him.
It's not. That's not revealed until the beginning of episode 11, anyway.
Mm-hmm. Which we may as well get to. All that glitters is not gold.
Yep. The entire confrontation on the ship basically carries out as expected. Once they take out the engine and the adolium antenna is no longer transmitting, the active support veil comes back up, and Daisuke and Kato both work together to bring down basically the whole ship.
Mm-hmm.
And they get to Shigemaru. But when they try to arrest Shigemaru, he has his own, apparently, Husk terminal in his ring, and says, "Husk, stop Daisuke." Which Husk tries to stop Daisuke with a laser gun. And he escapes on a hoverbike to the lab that they originally were trying to infiltrate before Cho and Takei were killed. And that's when we get to all that glitters is not gold.
Mm-hmm.
But when they get into this, the mountain lab, they both start investigating to try and find Shigemaru.
Mm-hmm.
And they find some other information, especially the data on adolium.
Yeah.
And then they find an underground bullet train that takes them all the way to the Kambe state that they originally came from, where Daisuke's grandmother lives.
Mm-hmm.
And before heading into the mansion, Daisuke gives the file and a flash drive with the data on adolium to Suzue with some instructions to transmit it to the world. And it's here that Daisuke reveals, "You're not my dad because you're right-handed and he was left-handed," and it turns out that it's Butler Hattori. And then Grandma Kikuko comes in and is like, "No, we needed to keep adolium secret because just like the nuclear bomb is bad. It can be very, very bad."
In fact,
Kikuko is old enough that I think she would have been a child during the outcome of World War II. Not necessarily that she would have been around during World War II, but like she would have been born during U.S. occupation.
mm-hmm.
So she's grown up in there's very much a chance that she grew up in a Japanese society that was A, terrified of nuclear weaponry, and B, terrified of any other weapon becoming the new ultimate weapon on Earth because it could result in the thing that happened to them happening to other people.
Mm-hmm.
So, in the end, we learn from Kikuko that Sayuri wanted to give adolium to the public so that there could be free energy for all. Shigemaru was split, but still mostly leaned to the side of the Kanbei family, probably due to conditioning. His grandmother would have been like, "That is so dangerous. That needs to stay in our hands because no one else is going to use it responsibly." Which I mean, how much of that is the fear of nuclear, and then how much of that is we want to make more money is up to anyone else to decide. And so Kikuko had the butler Hattori kill Sayuri, and Shigemaru just managed to show up right after he was done doing so and make it look like he did it, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And Shigemaru is, of course, imprisoned in a medical facility because he's probably lost his mind after all that happened.
There seems to be the implication that he was catatonic.
Yeah, that he just everything caused him to shut down.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time that this confession is going on between Kikuko and Daisuke, Kato, who is still pissed off that someone killed Chosan and Takei, goes to confront Hattori. Hattori has been wounded during this whole thing. He got a pretty big hole in his side. And they start fighting. And Hattori's no slouch. Hattori is a trained assassin, so they're fighting. And eventually Kato's pistol falls out, and Hattori gets it, and he's like, I have the gun, and I'm not going to kill you, but I will make it very painful if you try to come after me. And as Kato tries to run after him, he shoots Kato in the leg. Now my thought was, if you're not trying to kill him, shooting him in the thigh was probably the bad idea then. Because if he had gone just 1 inch to the side of the femur, he would have hit the femoral artery and killed Kato in seconds.
Mm-hmm.
From exsanguination. Now, Kato is screaming in pain because no matter what, getting shot, even with just a 38 special, is going to fucking hurt.
Oh, yes.
But he still manages to fight Hattori, who still has his hand on the gun. And at one point, Kato's like, fuck this, grabs the wound on Hattori's side and squeezes it. Mind you, this is a wound from exploding shrapnel, basically. That cut into his abdomen. There's very likely a laceration through the peritoneum, which might have actually caused even some lacerations on intestines or other GI tract stuff, which means he's now at a risk of sepsis. But it's also extremely painful.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually, Hattori faints. He has the foaming mouth bubbles and everything. And Kato stumbles his way back to the mansion so he can get to the underground portion where Suzue might be and ask for first aid. I mean, I might need some first aid after being shot in the fucking leg. But it's at this point that Daisuke is still talking to Kikuko and telling Suzue to release the data publicly, or at least almost does. But Kikuko once again says, yo, that could be used to create the next nuke. But Kato, being like, I need medical attention, please, slams his face onto the button to send it out. Not knowing that that's the button to send it out. And Suzue's like, Kato just sent it. And Daisuke starts laughing. He's like, yeah, that's Kato, his sense of justice. It was never going to be my decision. And Kato's like, did I mess up? Because I really hurt. And I need more blood in my body. There's too much blood outside my body. Can you help with that? And he faints. And then Daisuke, who was given back his badge by Kato earlier, arrests Kikuko for the murder of Sayuri Kanbei and several others and all this other shit.
Mm-hmm. In the last year or so, if I had a nickel for every time the matriarch of of a given high-ranking family in a Japanese anime was the real culprit behind the shenanigans, I'd have 2 nickels.
This isn't a lot. It's kind of weird that it happened twice.
And as far as the first one, it's the Fox's wedding story arc in Futo Detectives.
Yep.
Yeah.
But we get a flash forward to 2 weeks later, and Kato is offered a spot in the first division as he's coming out of the hospital with his crutch.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, nah, I can be a hero wherever I am. You're a hero, Hoshino. You need to be the hero on first division. Because the whole side thing here was Kato was somebody who stood up for justice so much that he was jokingly referred to and affectionately referred to as a hero, especially by Hoshino. But Hoshino made the point that ever since that time he had to shoot that person in self-defense, because it really was just self-defense, one of the tellers picked up the gun that the guy dropped and pointed it at a cop. What did you think was going to happen? This is the part where I hear everybody screeching in the background, but that's Japan! They don't have a gun culture! It's like, yes, but cops are still taught to shoot. Eat it.
Not to mention, a lot of people who are on the fainting couch about this have no idea about even the culture outside of their own damn house.
True. But Daisuke is also visiting his father and helping him out.
Mm-hmm.
But Daisuke does pick up Kato from the hospital, and it's in the same car we see in the very first episode that he was bumping through the carnival of cars with. How do I know this? Same car design, same license plate.
Bookends.
The other thing that ends up happening is the Modern Crimes Division gets Husk, which you would think would make them more efficient, but it just gives them new and interesting ways to fuck around.
Well, no, it does make them more efficient. Modern Crimes does do more stuff now because they have the time to.
Mm-hmm.
Because now our resident gambler, while playing poker online, is like, please just tell me if my opponent's card is another card, please. And Husk is like, I can't do that because one, to tell somebody else to tell one player another player's cards is cheating. 2, to do it on online poker is not just cheating, it's illegal.
Mm-hmm.
And even their captain says, you can't do that, that's illegal. We also see that Saiki, our resident snack expert, has been getting snacks from all over the world.
Yes, getting them shipped through not Amazon.
Through not Amazon, and for free to her, because we hear her say, oh, you should buy these snacks from this new place. And he says, of course, Balance Unlimited. So the Balance Unlimited extends to Modern Crimes as well. We also find out that Kame used Husk to collect, collate, categorize, and download a bunch of adult videos for more mature women, which is why he had a thing for the older police lady that helped him with the paint bullets.
Dude, all about them gilfs.
Yeah, he was.
Mm-hmm.
He absolutely was.
The only person from Modern Crimes who isn't there is Haru.
Well, 2 people from Modern Crimes who aren't there.
They're,
Haru and Daisuke.
Yeah. There's also the fact that Chosan's desk has its own memorial on it.
Yep. And that there's a newbie to Modern Crimes who's been helping them out.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and the final reveal. Captain Kiyomaru has not been Captain Kiyomaru this entire time. He's been acting Captain Kiyomaru. And now after this whole thing, he is Captain Kiyomaru.
Mm-hmm.
Which is funny, because they all freaked out when they said Dairi, which is temporary, basically.
Although,
Now,
to be fair, if you look back at all the scenes that showed his desk, it never showed the acting part because
no, because he always had the plushie of the police dog in front of it. And then, of course, we learned that Adolium is getting misused ever since it's been broadcast to the public, which is bound to happen. And there are black market dealings for it. And we happen to see Kato edging in on one of these black market dealings in the Bronx, in the U.S.
Yeah.
He calls Daisuke. He's like, "Where are you?" He's like, "I'm at home." He's like, "Well, we kind of need more backup here because they're really gunning for this." He's like, "I'll be there in 19 minutes." And he walks out of Buckingham Palace. How do you get from London to New York in 19 minutes? Not even the Concorde Supersonics could do that. They were like 3 hours. Well, our question is answered when we see him literally driving a car out of an intercontinental ballistic missile body.
Yep.
He launched himself in a fucking rocket.
Which I guess that's one way to say you went across the pond in he said 19 minutes. It ended up being about 7 minutes.
Well, I mean, 7 minutes in our time, but it could have been 19 minutes in their world. And we also see that there are some people who at least one person, but on the top of the parachute, the most subtle thing in the world, black and gold, that says wealth, or at least the kanji for wealth. And he lands as Kato is on top of the van for the chase.
And this was one of the moments where I'm glad we went with the sub.
As because of the bad English.
Yes.
The bad English was good. But the bad English is we're almost to the references. Hold up a second. So Kato is on top of this white van that is now being chased by the car. But just before the car lands and starts chasing the van, there is a jazz musical sting that has been used as a sort of a punchline, a musical punchline, I guess is the best way, where the jazz sting plays and then you hear the jazz band go, Fugou Keiji. It's like a jingle. Except this time, it was timed so that when the bad guys look out the window and look up at the falling car, they both go, Fugou Keiji, in the same time as the song, as the musical sting. It was the fucking best thing. And as he lands behind them and is chasing them, he's like, Husk! He gets Husk to block off a bunch of roads and get traffic away, and then also pay in advance for the destruction he's about to cause with the missiles on his car. And as they turn one of the corners that's blocked off by construction, there's a very familiar face. It's the kid from the bullet train. Now he's in America, like Daisuke promised he would get his sister there. And he's also wearing a helmet that says wealth on it. Because of course he is. Because of course now he works for the Kanbei conglomerate. But as they're starting to cross this bridge, Kato gets ahead of it, gets over the top of the van, flips in front of it, pushes against it, which is the first call out. That's a Spider-Man call out right there from the Raimi Spider-Man stuff.
Spider-Man 2 specifically.
Squawk, squawk. But from there, we see the characters very clearly inside the van are XPs of the main characters from Men in Black International, for sure. And then as he stops the car, we see the fucking license plate of this white van that says Ecto 1. So, Spider-Man, Men in Black, Ghostbusters, all referenced at once. And then, well, the final part of all this, the missiles go off, and Monk said he was joking when he thought that Daisuke was going to blow up the Brooklyn Bridge.
That wasn't a prediction. That was a fucking spoiler.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh. And Kato is once again hanging by his fingers on the bridge, and Kanbei walks up to look down at him. And for a moment, you think, maybe Kanbei will help him up. And then Kanbei smirks. And Haru grits his teeth and lets go on purpose and screams, Daisuke Kanbei! As he falls into the water. And then, well, we kind of haven't been keeping track of the costs for the last few episodes, and that's because the last thing Kanbei does is
you guys want to know what the fucking total price is? All the damages, all the vehicles he's bought, all the weapons he's bought, everything accumulated in 11 episodes. You would think it'll be a set amount, right? No! Because the final amount, the grand total of everything in this whole fucking anime, balanced unlimited.
It's in the title, people. Although Coop's getting this angry is still funny.
Oh, God.
I did all this just for this fucking shit.
Because he pulls out the checkbook, which has the same coloring as the tally boards that we've been seeing every episode, and writes balance unlimited on the check and throws it into the screen. And that's the end of the episode.
Yeah, it is somewhat amusing that that things were written out, that on the wiki for the series it's written out as the first season was concluded, but you don't really see multi-season stuff on Noitamina. It's not really made for that. Seasons of anime on Noitamina are one and dones.
Generally, yeah.
But as we come to our conclusion, it's time to get to our final judgments.
Hold on. There is one last thing we do need to mention. And that is that this opening is one of the few openings that we don't skip. Navigator by Six Tones.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody should go listen to it because it's a goddamn banger. But with that being said, let's get down to our final judgments. I'll start with you, Brother Flutter. What have you got for me?
The comedy and writing in this anime is great. The buddy cop dynamic with Daisuke and Haru is amazing, especially in the episode where he ends up staying with Haru on account of forgetting Kyusuke and his phone in the truck. The audio identity is stellar. The animation's beautiful. I can't give this any higher than Weeb.
All right. With one vote of we move on to you, Brother Coops. I heard your anger, but let's hear everything else, too. Tell us how you really feel.
I already gave my thoughts on it after the third episode we watched. But after watching everything else, I think it was absolutely warranted. The amount of character we have for both Daisuke and Haru kind of reminds me of the kind of relationship that Tendo and Kagami had in Kabuto. I didn't mention this during our watch time, but now I'm mentioning it now. It definitely reminds me of that because you got one person that's that's pretty much has a huge sense of justice and always wants to do the right thing, and you have another character that plays by his own rules but still gets shit done. I absolutely adored the. I absolutely adore it. I absolutely love the fact that we get a damage cost for at the end of every single episode. I was truly invested in this shit, and while I am a little bit pissed that the grand total amount just ended up to being infinity, I absolutely adored this, and I will watch it as many times as I want. Also, 6 stars is literally number one on my YouTube music playlist right now. So in the end, oh, by the way, not a lot of waifus, but then again, this show didn't need them. So with that being said, this mastermind gives it weeb.
I think Suzue was all the waifu he needed, so yeah. All right, with 2 votes of we move on to you, Monk. What do you say?
So, I will always be a sucker for a good mystery, and this one definitely delivered with that. I am actually glad that it didn't spend the entire series focused on one particular mystery, but rather the bulk of it was focused in the second half of it, because it gave the cast room to breathe. A lot of mystery stories try to focus on one big mystery, one big Moriarty like problem, and the issue that happens when you do that is you end up suffocating the rest of the cast, because everything has to be in service to that Moriarty problem. With this one, we don't really have that. Daisuke is certainly a bastard, but the reason why I can't be too mad at him is because I look at some of his antics, wealth aside, and I feel attacked.
You too, eh, Monk?
Because in part because of, and truth be told, since we're gonna be bringing up writers that are reminded of, there's a more recent example I can go with when it comes to the dynamic of Haru and Daisuke.
Geeks and Tycoon.
Yeah, Geets
Yeah.
and Tycoon.
It
It doesn't help that Daisuke acts a bit like a fox. Not in the blatant trickster way, but in the subtle jackass kind of way.
In the smug dick kind of way?
Yes, arrogant bastard ale, as it were. Which is an aggressive beer that some of you may not like. But the only questionable thing I could say is when it comes to what Adolium does, it does veer a little bit into it can do whatever we want it to kind of things. But since that's not the point of the story, I'm willing to let that pass.
Plus, it's phlebotinum, Monk. If we're gonna name tropes here, it's phlebotinum.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Or unobtainium, whichever one you want to use.
Mm-hmm. It is a MacGuffin in the.
Mm-hmm.
I know MacGuffin is a word that's been flanderized by people who are very shit at commentary. But this is a MacGuffin in the sense that Alfred Hitchcock intended the word MacGuffin to be used. Something that's a setting off point for bigger parts of the story. But admittedly, the 11-episode thing did mess with scheduling, but I can't think of many ways that you could add another episode. There are also these little fan magazines that were put on the anime's website, one of which is very clearly trying to invoke the covers of Time magazine. But all of that said, this is another classic from Noitamina, and I am willing to give it a stamp of weeb.
All right, we have 3 votes of weeb, and we end on me as usual. I watched Fugou Keiji when it was coming out, which means I also experienced the months-long delay due to COVID. But the first 2 episodes were more than enough to whet my appetite and make me hunger for the rest of the show. The buddy cop dynamic aside, both of our deuteragonists are well fleshed out, and the episodes exploring that are well made. By keeping the main mystery until the second half, as Monk pointed out, you do give the cast time to breathe, but you also give the cast time to develop and give you their full faceted forms. The art style is hilarious and impressive and colorful and dynamic, depending on what situation you might be in the show at the time. It's extremely expressive as well. The catchphrase of Balance Unlimited was definitely a stroke of genius, because I'm almost sure that was probably not in the original novel. But that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But alongside that, we actually had a really good audio engineering. There was not a lot of OST that stood out, except in the moments it needed to, which was good. This is definitely one of those shows where the OST was more to enhance than to spotlight things. But it served its purpose well. And of course, there's also the musical sting / punchline I mentioned earlier of Fugou Keiji. Yep, we all enjoyed that for various reasons. I'm sure Monk enjoyed it just because it's jazz.
Yes. Why is everybody so shocked when I say I like jazz?
No, I'm not shocked. I know you too well because I like jazz.
Yeah, it's not like during the Tokyo Olympics I was fanboying over the fact that Uehara was involved with the ceremonies.
No, not at all.
Or the whole thing with Blue Giant, but that's a story for another day.
Yeah, that's a different story entirely. But because the audio engineering was done well, not only was the music good, a lot of the sounds for the gadgets were really, really unique and punchy in a way that they needed to be. Especially for the scene every time we saw she's doing something like paying everybody in their accounts or whatever. Or bringing up information onto the AR goggles or glasses.
Mm-hmm.
The cast was phenomenal. Even if some of the cast members were probably a little underutilized comparatively, especially considering their positions in other anime, they were still used to the best effect they could be. And because of all of this, it is my great pleasure to declare Fugou Keiji Balance Unlimited to be weeb. And thus, with 4 votes of weeb and 0 of scrub, we all find here in this parliament Fugou Keiji Balance Unlimited to be weeb.
Also, fuck the Bronx and fuck the Yankees.
All right.
The monk has had to step away momentarily, and he will soon return.
I am back.
Oh, there he is.
So, now that we have finished with our grading, it is time to look towards the future.
Wheel of morality, turn, turn, turn. Tell us the lesson that we should learn.
And the result is Real life.
That was the one we were just talking about at the beginning of this episode where we have to watch the OVAs, Monk.
God damn.
I am this time I get to say it. I'm Nostradamus. Thank you very fucking much.
Okay then, so come back in a few weeks where we tackle real life.
I have real life. Real life is very good.
But until then, on behalf of the good brothers present and not present, my name is Mildra. I am your gaming monk. Stay fucking frosty, everybody.